The Carter family's home was filled with laughter, warmth, and the kind of love that made every day feel like a gift. Their golden-colored dog Luna had been part of the family for years. She was gentle, loyal, and protective, especially around the children. When the family learned she was expecting puppies, excitement filled their hearts. They prepared blankets, cushions, and a quiet corner of the living room where Luna could rest safely. Every evening the children, Olivia, Noah, and little Grace, would sit near her, stroking her fur, whispering soft words of encouragement. Their parents, David and Emily Carter, watched with joy, eager to welcome new life into their already lively household. That night, silence wrapped the house, broken only by Luna's restless whimpers. She paced in circles before settling onto the thick blanket Emily had laid out for her. Her breaths grew heavy, her body trembling. The family gathered around, their voices hushed, hearts pounding with anticipation. Suddenly, a small cry pierced the stillness. The first puppy had arrived, tiny, fragile, and alive. The children gasped with wonder, clapping their hands while David's eyes filled with tears. One by one, more puppies followed. 3, 5, 7. Luna licked each one tenderly, nudging them close to her body for warmth. The children counted with wide eyes, their voices trembling with amazement. Another one. Olivia shouted softly. "No way, that's 8 already," Noah whispered. Hours passed, yet Luna pressed on with unwavering strength. Her body shook from exhaustion, but her determination never wavered. By the time the 12th puppy was born, Emily covered her mouth in disbelief. "This can't be real," she murmured. Finally, the 15th tiny form slipped into the world. The room fell silent, the enormity of the moment stealing everyone's breath. 15 puppies. The living room looked like a miracle had unfolded before their eyes. Blankets were covered with squirming little bodies, their cries rising and falling like a strange chorus. Luna collapsed heavily, curling protectively around them. Her eyes fluttered shut, but even in her exhaustion, her body pressed firmly against her litter, as though guarding a treasure too precious to lose. The children leaned closer, their small hands itching to touch. 15, Grace whispered in awe. She had 15. Within minutes, the news spread through the neighborhood. Mr. and Mrs. Walker, their closest neighbors, appeared at the door, their faces glowing with astonishment. 15. Mrs. Walker gasped. "That's incredible. I've never heard of such a thing." Soon more neighbors gathered, peeking into the living room, eager to see the sight. The Carters smiled with pride, basking in the admiration. For a moment, it felt as if nothing could spoil the happiness in their home that night. But beneath the joy, something faint but unsettling lingered. By morning, the house was buzzing with excitement. Olivia and Noah woke early, running to the living room where Luna lay with her 15 newborns. The tiny bodies wriggled and squeaked beneath their mother's warmth. "They're so small," Grace whispered, giggling. "They look like little toys," Noah added, reaching out carefully. Emily smiled warmly, though she noticed something peculiar. A few of the puppies didn't quite look the same as the others. Their movements seemed jerky, their cries sharper. She brushed the thought aside, telling herself it was just her imagination. Word of Luna's extraordinary litter spread quickly. By midday, families from down the street came knocking, eager to witness what many were already calling a miracle. One by one, visitors stepped inside, their voices filled with awe. "Unbelievable," one neighbor muttered. "She's given you more joy than you'll know what to do with," another laughed. The children scribbled names for each puppy on scraps of paper. Olivia insisted on naming the smallest one Lucky. Noah declared the last-born Star. Grace clapped her hands, giggling as she gave hers the name Fluffy. Laughter echoed through the home. Balloons were hung that evening, and Emily prepared a small celebration. Plates of food filled the table while visitors took turns glancing at the blanket where Luna rested with her litter. Every guest left amazed, whispering about how blessed the Carters were. For David and Emily, life felt perfect. Their beloved Luna had given them a gift unlike any other. Yet while the family celebrated, Luna's behavior grew unusual. She seemed restless, her eyes sharper than ever. When strangers leaned too close to the puppies, her body stiffened, her gaze narrowing with unease. "She's just being protective," David reassured Emily. But the way Luna sniffed certain newborns again and again, the way she nudged them apart from the rest, It didn't feel like ordinary motherly instinct. Still, the joy of the moment drowned out any doubt. In the days that followed, the Carters began to notice differences they couldn't explain. Some of the newborns cried in piercing tones that echoed unervingly through the room. Their sounds were not like the soft whines of ordinary puppies. "They just sound funny," Noah said, though his laugh was nervous. But Luna's reaction was different. Each time the sharp cries rang out, her ears shot up, her body tense. She pressed herself closer to the unusual pups, licking them with an urgency that unsettled Emily. Feeding time brought more questions. While most of the litter nursed naturally, several struggled as if they didn't know how. Their movements were awkward, twisting oddly when Emily tried to guide them. "They might just be weaker," David suggested. Yet his voice carried doubt he couldn't hide. Emily noticed their appearance too. A few had sharper faces, longer limbs, and fur that felt coarse under her fingers. She said nothing, not wanting to shatter the children's joy. Playtime grew stranger. Normal puppies would crawl clumsily, wagging tails and letting out soft yelps. Instead, some of these little ones moved in jerky motions, their tiny bodies trembling with unnatural control. When their eyes opened earlier than expected, the Carters froze. The gaze that met them wasn't playful curiosity. It was sharp, observant, almost knowing. "They just need time," David said quickly. But even he shivered when one of the newborns locked eyes with him, unblinking. Despite their unease, the children still adored them. Grace giggled when one climbed onto her lap, even though its strange movements made her flinch. Olivia hugged one close, whispering promises of care. Their innocence shielded them from the fear quietly growing in their parents' hearts. But Luna's behavior could no longer be ignored. Luna had always been gentle and playful. Yet now, her personality shifted. She grew restless, her body tense whenever anyone came near certain pups. When Olivia reached out to lift one, Luna growled softly, not aggressive, but protective in a way Emily had never seen before. At night, instead of curling with all 15, Luna carried some away to another corner of the living room. By morning, the Carters would find her wrapped tightly around those few, her eyes wide and alert. "She's just overwhelmed," Emily said nervously. "It's a big litter." But deep down, they all wondered, why was Luna separating the same puppies again and again? The way she cleaned them seemed obsessive. She licked certain ones repeatedly, almost as if trying to erase something about them. When Noah once picked one up, Luna stiffened, her body trembling as she snatched it back. Her tail didn't wag. Her eyes burned with something Emily couldn't name. The family began whispering among themselves. "Why does she treat them differently?" Olivia asked. "Are they sick?" Grace whispered. David tried to reassure them, but his own doubts grew heavier. Luna's instincts were sharper than ever, and they all sensed she knew something the humans did not. At first, the Carters tried to laugh off Luna's strange behavior. "She's just being a careful mom," David said, though his words lacked conviction. But as days passed, the unease in their home grew harder to ignore. The puppies weren't acting like normal dogs. Some refused to bark or whine, instead producing high-pitched screeches that made the children flinch. Others moved in restless jerks, pacing unnaturally instead of crawling clumsily like young pups should. Olivia and Noah exchanged nervous glances each time the odd cries echoed through the room. Grace, once eager to cradle them, now hesitated, clutching her mother's arm tightly. Emily noticed another disturbing change. The newborns' bodies were developing too quickly. Puppies usually stayed small for weeks, their fur softening gradually as they grew. But these little ones seemed to stretch and lengthen overnight. Their eyes opened days earlier than expected, glowing faintly beneath the dim lamplight. "Are they supposed to grow this fast?" Emily asked one evening, her voice trembling. David didn't answer at first. He sat staring at the litter, jaw clenched, heart pounding. Finally, he muttered, "I don't know." The children whispered among themselves. "They're different," Grace admitted softly. When one of the pups stared at her with unblinking intensity, she shrank back quickly. "It doesn't even look like a puppy." Emily scolded her gently, but her own heart echoed the same fear. Those eyes weren't innocent. They seemed sharp, calculating, almost unnatural. The Carters weren't the only ones growing uneasy. Neighbors who had once marveled at Luna's miracle litter began to notice the unsettling truth. When Mrs. Jensen stopped by, Her smile faded as she leaned closer to the blanket. "They don't look like puppies," she whispered to Emily. "Their legs, their faces, something isn't right." Another neighbor, Mr. Walker, frowned at the sounds coming from the litter. "Those cries," he muttered, "they don't sound like dogs at all." Emily forced a nervous laugh, insisting everything was fine. But the weight of their words settled heavily on her shoulders. Children from nearby homes, who once begged to hold the puppies, now stood at a distance. One brave boy finally reached out, only for the pup to let out a screech so sharp it sent him stumbling back. "That's not a bark," he cried, clinging to his mother. Parents quickly pulled their children away, muttering uneasy words as they left. The Carters exchanged looks of quiet dread. "Maybe they just need more time," David said weakly. But no one seemed convinced, not even himself. During a family gathering, Emily's brother, Uncle Mark, who had raised dogs his entire life, bent down to inspect the litter. He studied them silently before shaking his head. "I don't know what these are," he said finally, his voice low. "But they're not like any puppies I've seen before." His words struck the room like a blow. Olivia and Noah sat silently, their earlier excitement dimmed by worry. Grace buried her face in Emily's lap, whispering, "I'm scared." Even Luna's behavior unsettled visitors. Each time someone leaned too close, she stiffened, growling softly until they pulled away. Emily tried to explain she was just protective, but deep inside she wondered, protective from what? As days passed, fewer neighbors came. Curiosity had turned into unease, and unease into avoidance. The miracle that had once brought admiration was quickly becoming a secret cloaked in fear. Weeks passed, and the newborns grew at a pace that terrified Emily. Their bodies lengthened unnaturally, their limbs stretching longer than normal dogs. Their teeth emerged sharp and early, flashing when they opened their mouths. At night, strange cries echoed through the house, not like yelps, but shrill, unsettling sounds that chilled everyone who heard them. Sometimes Luna answered with low, mournful howls, her body trembling as though she understood something no one else did. Their appetite was insatiable. Normal puppy food barely satisfied them. Some devoured scraps of meat ravenously, while others refused food altogether, leaving Emily confused and frightened. "They're growing too fast," she whispered one night, watching their sharp teeth tear into meat. David rubbed his forehead, exhaustion weighing him down. "They'll settle," he insisted. But even he knew his words were hollow. From behind curtains, neighbors watched the Carters' yard, whispering when they saw the strange pups darting about. "They don't move like dogs," one muttered. "Something's wrong," another whispered. Children began avoiding the street, clutching their parents' hands tightly. Adults spoke of calling authorities. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed the creatures weren't dogs at all, but something wild. Something dangerous. The Carters tried to ignore it, but the tension inside their home grew unbearable. Olivia begged for answers. Grace asked why the puppies stared at her like that. Noah, once fearless, now refused to be alone with them. David paced the living room each night, torn between love for Luna's litter and the gnawing fear in his chest. Emily lay awake, heart racing at every strange cry. Only Luna remained calm, her devotion unshaken. She curled protectively around her young, eyes glowing with unwavering resolve. To her, they were hers, no matter what anyone said. One evening, the family gathered in silence, the weight of their fear pressing heavily on them. "Why do they look different?" Olivia whispered. "Why do they make those sounds?" Grace added, eyes wide. Emily stroked her daughter's hair, whispering, "They're special." But her own voice trembled with doubt. David finally broke the silence. "They're not like dogs," he admitted, his voice low. Emily looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "Then what are they?" No one had an answer. The uncertainty gnawed at their hearts, filling the home with restless dread. Finally, Emily could no longer hold back her fear. Early one morning, she picked up the phone with shaking hands and called the local veterinarian, Dr. Harris. "Something's not right," she whispered. "Luna's puppies, they're different." Dr. Harris agreed to visit that very afternoon. When the children heard, they clung to Luna nervously, while David paced the room, muttering, "Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they're just unusual." But deep down, even he wasn't sure. When Dr. Harris arrived, Luna barked once but quickly settled, though her body remained tense. He knelt beside the blanket where all 15 newborns wriggled. At first, he smiled politely. But as his eyes moved from one to another, his smile faded. He leaned closer, brow furrowing, his hands trembling slightly as he lifted one of the smaller creatures. Its sharp cries pierced the room, making Luna growl deeply, her body rigid with protectiveness. The Carters watched anxiously as Dr. Harris examined each newborn. Some looked close enough to puppies, though still unusual. Others seemed undeniably different. Their teeth were sharper, their eyes too focused, their movements too advanced. "These cries," he muttered, shaking his head. "This isn't normal." Emily's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" she asked quickly. But Dr. Harris didn't answer right away. His silence was louder than words. The children huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. "Are they sick?" Grace asked timidly. Emily squeezed her hand. "We'll find out," she whispered, though her voice shook. Dr. Harris examined them longer, asking questions that made everyone uneasy. Had Luna been outside recently? Had she been near wild animals before the birth? Each question made David's chest tighten. When the exam finally ended, Dr. Harris stood slowly, his expression grave. He pulled off his gloves as if buying time, then spoke carefully. "They're alive and strong," he said. "But I need to be honest. These aren't like any puppies I've ever seen before." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Luna pressed closer to her litter, her growl low and steady. The Carters sat frozen, faces pale, hearts pounding with fear. The room was so silent that even the faint rustle of the curtains seemed loud. David stepped forward, his voice trembling. "What do you mean, not like puppies?" Dr. Harris avoided his eyes at first. He bent down again, running his hand over the odd fur of one pup. Its coarse texture made him frown. He studied its paws, its teeth, the unblinking stare that followed him. Finally, he straightened with a heavy sigh. "I don't want to alarm you, but something isn't right here." Emily's hands tightened on Grace's shoulders. "You're scaring us," she whispered. Dr. Harris cleared his throat, speaking slowly. "Puppies don't develop this way. Their teeth shouldn't be this sharp. Their cries," he paused, shaking his head. "They don't sound like dogs at all." The children stared in horror. "Then what are they?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Harris hesitated. His silence made the air feel heavier, almost suffocating. Finally, he looked at David. "Has Luna been around any wild animals?" David's heart sank. He thought back to the weeks before the birth. Luna had wandered into the woods once or twice, staying longer than usual. Could something have happened then? The thought made his blood run cold. "Doctor," Emily pressed, her voice sharp with fear, "tell us the truth. What are they?" Dr. Harris's eyes darkened. He folded his arms. "I believe they're hybrids. Crossed with something else. Something wild." The family sat frozen, struggling to comprehend. "Hybrids?" David repeated, his voice breaking. Emily covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. The children clung to each other, trembling. "They're not normal puppies," Dr. Harris continued, his voice firm. "They won't grow into normal dogs. Their instincts will be stronger, their behavior unpredictable. You need to prepare yourselves." Luna whimpered, curling tightly around her litter as if shielding them from judgment. Her eyes glowed with fierce determination. Grace buried her face in Emily's lap. "But they're still ours," she whispered. Emily stroked her daughter's hair, unable to speak. David's fists clenched. His voice shook with denial. "You're telling me my dog gave birth to, not dogs?" Dr. Harris nodded solemnly. "Yes. Rare, but possible. And dangerous." The silence that followed was suffocating. The drive back from the clinic was silent. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her hands trembling. The children huddled together in the back, whispering questions their parents couldn't answer. Luna lay curled protectively around her young, her eyes darting nervously at every sound. David gripped the steering wheel, Dr. Harris's words echoing in his head. "Not dogs. Hybrids. Dangerous." At home, Emily tried to comfort the children. "They're still babies," she whispered. But her own voice trembled. Could these creatures grow into something they couldn't control? Every sharp cry from the litter made her flinch now. Every unblinking stare sent a chill down her spine. The children, torn between fear and love, couldn't let go of their attachment. They had given the newborns names, whispered promises, imagined futures. Those dreams now felt fragile, yet Olivia clung to them stubbornly. "I don't care if they're not dogs," she said fiercely. "They're still ours." Her words carried the innocence of a child's heart but left Emily shaken. It didn't take long for whispers to spread. The vet had spoken cautiously, but in a small town, secrets never lasted. "Luna's puppies aren't really dogs," one neighbor whispered to another. Soon, people crossed the street to avoid the Carters' home. Children who once begged to see the puppies now clung to their parents in fear. What was once celebrated as a miracle had become a shadow over their house. Rumors grew wild. Some swore they had seen the pups move too fast. Others claimed they'd heard unnatural cries in the night. "They're monsters," someone whispered at the market. "They're dangerous," another muttered. The Carters felt the weight of every stare, every hushed voice. At school, Olivia and Noah were teased cruelly. "Do you live with creatures?" one boy sneered. Grace came home crying, her small heart broken. Emily pulled them close. "They don't understand," she said softly. But even she was haunted by the same doubts. Letters soon began arriving at the Carters' doorstep. Notes from neighbors, filled with warnings and veiled threats. "You need to do something before it's too late." What if they hurt someone? David sat at the kitchen table, the pile of letters before him like daggers to his heart. Emily placed her hand on his shoulder. "What are we going to do?" she asked softly. He had no answer. That night, after the children were asleep, David and Emily spoke quietly. "We can't keep this a secret forever," Emily whispered. "If they're dangerous." "But look at Luna," David interrupted. His voice broke as he glanced toward the loyal dog curled around her litter. "She trusts us. How can I betray her?" The choice was clear yet impossible. Risk everything for love, or protect themselves by giving up what they cherished. Finally, they decided to meet Dr. Harris again. They carried the litter carefully to his clinic, Luna trailing protectively behind. The vet listened as they poured out their fears. His expression grew serious.